Oh no, we went to Balmafad to dances in the horse and cutter
That's when there was
many times.
That's when there was time because there wasn't much doing on the farm.
And
Well,
the errand too.
if it was to go to a party, I'd go on snowshoes.
Would you?
I don't know if I get home on snowshoes, but
Well,
So in terms of the fad, then you mentioned the store and the mill, and
yes.
but you didn't go to the church here. You must
Other
have-
than we always came to the anniversary. I
Uh-huh.
can remember we always came at night to the anniversary.
when you married Garnet, then did you start to come here
Oh
instead?
yes, oh yes.
Yeah. And generally, what was the community spirit like in those days of knowing your neighbors?
Oh yeah,
helping out?
everybody was really friendly back then, and well, like neighbors, you exchanged work with them all the time for thrashing and corn cutting and wood bees, all that sort of thing. That they were back and forth together a lot.
Yeah.
But now, there's none of that at all.
Well, there
So it's
isn't.
a little quite different that
Yeah.
way.
There isn't-
Although we're good friends with all our neighbors, know them all, and are quite good friends with them, but you just don't see them like you did. People
How
back
do
then.
most of those neighbors have sort of farm roots from the past, or are there some commuters to Toronto who are your
Commuters
neighbors?
mostly,
Are they?
mostly.
But you managed to get to know them,
Most of them. There's
Good.
some farther up the line now that we're not maybe real well acquainted with.
eh? Mm.
Maybe Lynn and I get acquainted with them a little better. We canvass for the Cancer Society every spring,
I see.
and we've got to know some of them through that.
Hmm.
But we,
How do you find it here in the church getting to know people who are newer? I guess Brenda said she's here 10 years, so it's hardly
Yes.
new. But
anybody that, we get acquainted with the ones that come. But these subdivisions, there's very few. We've tried, things to attract them, but it doesn't seem to. But I can understand in a way they're all working. Both people are working out a distance. And another thing, kids have so many sports on today that.
yeah,
But it's hard to, seems to be hard, and it's the same at the community center. These newer people don't have much to do with it.
okay.
A few,
yes,
I guess, but not very
What are
many.
the main things that happen in the community center these days? Euchre parties?
They have euchre parties, yeah. And they, once in a while, I think they have a dance. But they rent it out quite a bit.
Okay,
That's how they keep it going, I guess.
right. So just thinking, just finishing off about the early days in the community, I guess what was some of the hard times you remember there, financially or socially? Or?
Well, financially, you never seem to make much on the farm, I'll say that. Lots of hard work, but you didn't make much. And today there's, well, you couldn't survive.
And what you grow,
No, everybody has
but
something else they work at.
But you ate pretty well in those days.
Oh, I think, of course, they had their own produce, I guess, for one thing, and
Did you ever go without food? Were you ever short on food in the winter?
no, I don't think really. Well,
Always
it
be
was pretty hard to have meat back, in the early times, because unless they canned it some way, they didn't always have it. Maybe they'd get it on weekend when they went to town or something. And
Do you remember something ever called a beef ring?
oh yes, we belonged to that.
We talked about that
Yeah, we belonged
this
to that,
morning, and I guess
and that was very good.
if you had a chicken, I guess you could, if you were desperate. you
Yeah,
could-
but the beef ring just went from, I don't know, they started at a certain time in the spring, after the roads got better, I guess. And
okay.
then it was over in the fall, you see.
If you had some meat, you could somehow keep it over winter, couldn't you?
Well,
Not,
sometimes
not
they-
reliably, I guess. It
Not
might thaw.
too reliably. But then they got the creameries got the lockers
Oh, yes.
for keeping
We
frozen food, so
spoke
that
about
was
that,
quite an
yeah.
advantage.
Yeah.
You went and you had your food
Yeah.
in the creamery
You put
coolers
it in these lockers, and then you had to go there
and get it there.
and get it. But
Yeah.
they kept it really cold and well frozen.
So the ups and the downs of life in that, in the early community, say before you were married, some of the good memories that you have of any particular party or hockey game or
Well, we went to lots of hockey games when Balmafad played.
Dennis Garnett and I were together
Yes.
in those. They're asking a bit about the difference between women's work and men's work on the farm. Was that pretty much the same for most couples, do you think? Or
No, I wouldn't say it is. No.
did you end up in the fields or
Oh yeah,
on the tractor?
Garnet and I always worked together, whether it was in the field or in the barn.
Oh, is that right?
We did work
Yeah.
together. Now some women maybe went to the barn and helped milk cows, but that was the extent of their outdoor work.
Yeah.
But we did both together.
So you were forking sheaves and
Well, it got to the stage, well, I don't think maybe I had a whole lot to do with the sheaves, because he got,
it'd be thrashing time.
it was thrashing, but then they changed from that to doing combining. Oh yes, I used to ride the binder when we'd be cutting the
Oh,
grain and
yeah.
Driving the horses.
no, this was horses, and sometimes it got later the tractor, you see.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, when he used the horses, I guess he'd ride the binder and drive the horses himself. But when he was using the tractor to,
Was that fairly common? Were the other farm women doing that pretty well, or were you a bit unusual that way?
there was some that worked out like that. Now Vera Sanderson, she always helped outside like that, and now I don't think Laura did, but she had her little children pretty close together and had them to care for her. She didn't work. She went out the barn and milked cows, I think, but other than that, she didn't do any house field work or anything.
Now, I'm thinking of those days when there was a farm on every 100 acres, more or less, and everybody was producing and selling and eating what they produced and selling some others. But now, today, there isn't, as you were saying, there isn't hardly a single thing grown to eat. Somebody might have a garden, but there is no agricultural production to speak of in this community anymore. What would you think back would be the reasons, some of the reasons why that changed, why those farms went out of production?
Well, just that they weren't making enough was that was the problem.
All right.
Yeah.
At the end of a year, did you have any cash from the farm, or it was just?
Wouldn't be too much, I don't think. No,
No.
pretty much kept.
Did you have to pick rocks every spring?
Oh yeah, lots of them, lots of them.
Every spring.
Oh yes, and there's so many stone around this area that probably not so much below the Balmafad side road as above. It was better that way down below the Balmafad side road, but above the Balmafad side road, there's
Did you enjoy the work, the rock work?
not the rock work so
No.
much. No,
The,
all that bending up and down, up and down.
So farmers even and their sons would start to work out to make income somewhere else and do less
That's
farming.
what happened, I think.
Where would they go to work, for example? Remember, did Garnet ever take a job off the farm?
No, he was always after he
Yeah,
got through school. He worked on the farm.
quite a bit of land, I guess.
They had hired men always then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some of the others, where would they go? Into Brampton or Toronto, or where would you get work in those days?
I'm trying to think. Now, Lauren, when he was when he was going to high school, he worked down at Vollmer's at the garden center in the summer
Oh, yeah.
because mostly because dust, and he was allergic to
Oh, yeah.
a lot of things around the farm, so. And his dad always advised him to try as many things as he could before he decide what he really wanted to do.
Good. So others would just sell up and move to town and try and get work there.
Well,
they
as
say.
I say, when people got old, they either moved or died. They stayed on the farm pretty much until they moved or died. But it hasn't been that way recently. They give up usually when they
Yeah.
and rent their land out to somebody that's full-time operator for cash cropping
Yeah,
and that.
there's a lot of that now, isn't
Yeah,
there?
yeah.
What would be the cash crops that would be grown now?
Well, on ours they've had corn, soybeans, wheat, canola. I guess they had that maybe once too, but
Even some hay, I suppose.
yeah.
So I wasn't quite right to say that there isn't any food production anymore.
There's food production. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's food production, but it's not being done by the farmers, the
Farmers
small
themselves.
farmers themselves.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say there isn't some, a few.
Who are the big farmers? Are they just big farmers, or are they work for a company, or who's behind that cash farming, cash crops?
The cash cropping?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, like Fred Anthony, he has, well, they're limited, I guess, Anthony Acres Limited, and they farm thousands of acres.
I see.
But,
Is it the Anthony's from Acton? Then?
yeah, Limehouse direction.
I see.
But they have, they have to hire so much help, and the machinery that they use, my goodness, the size of it and the cost of it. So I don't know just how much they're making either, but they seem to keep going.
Yeah. And through your time, do you think back, we're asking if there's any kind of amusing characters or funny?
There was some
Funny
amusing
people.
characters, but I don't know.
What do you want to tell about them or not?
Yeah, I probably heard a bit about them, but I don't know.
Well, what about memorable stories?
Mem-
Any heroic
Maybe don't want any this or
any
some of it
heroic deeds
repeated.
that were done by?
You probably remember hearing, I think maybe your dad, they were going to a hockey game in Acton. There was Jerry Kentner, Jerry's nephew, I believe, played hockey for Acton.
Mm-hmm.
And they were going, it was an old car, I don't know, pretty old car. And they got going in the Acton side road and thought there was something wrong. So finally they got out and looked and they had a flat tire. And Jerry Kentner, he's so anxious to get to this game, he says, drive on, drive on. So they drove on the flat tire.
Wrecked the tire. I
Wrecked the
guess.
rim probably
Yeah.
too, I don't know.
Is Jerry Kentner any relative to David Kentner, the councillor?
I think way back probably.
Because he's the one that supports us
Yeah.
Yeah,
on council.
yeah, well you better not tell him that then.
Who was the
Oh, he
one
loves
of the kids that came to live in the Fad was Elwood Kentner. He lived there.
Yeah, well
Who
you
would-
see,
who would his
he
father
was,
be?
I'm trying to think of his dad's name, but he was a nephew of Viola Hills. She was a Kentner.
Oh, that's right.
And there was Walter Kentner,
Okay.
was her brother.
Yeah. Well,
Oh, I was trying
we're
to
pretty
think
sure
about-
to be linked to this guy who's the councillor. I think.
Uh-huh.
Well, there was a Jerry Kentner that I was telling you this morning about playing horseshoes with and having to buy a Coke for him.
Right.
Is it the same Jerry? Not the
Oh.
same Jerry Kentner that worked for Dan Campbell.
Well, probably would be.
Yeah,
Yeah, probably would be.
he was from UK.
I think he was still around after I was married. I think
Yeah.
he was at our place at the Thrashing, but I don't remember that much about him, only hearing some of these things, you see. And he always wore a black smock hottest day in the summer, he'd have
Yeah,
this black
it's the
smock
same
on,
guy.
and he said, what would keep the cold out would keep the heat out.
Oh, that works.
That was his theory.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Uh-huh.
Well,
And another ones that was Garnet got quite a bit of amusement out of was the McClures down where Frank Smith's were, you know.
yeah. I know.
There was a bachelor, Sam, and two sisters,
Was that before
and
Frank
Jane
was
and
there?
Elizabeth, and Lizzie,
Okay.
and he used to help them quite a bit. Sam was in the hospital, had an operation one time, and he went down and helped with the milking, and he was around there quite a bit, but he got quite a lot of amusement out of something. And Jane, she'd see you with something new on, and she'd say, my, is that the style now?
Is that right?
Different, just different little kind of strange things they would say that he got quite a bit of amusement out of.
What about the McClures? Do you have any idea who William McClure would be? There's
Well, there's,
The one who
You see-
supposedly started the farm
Yeah.
that Sandy Bartley.
I don't know anything about him at all, what family he would be, but those McClure girls that lived in Georgetown,
Ida.
Isla, she died,
Ida. Recently?
Oh yeah, this winter,
Yeah. I think I
spring,
What?
winter or spring.
That lived on Maple Street?
Mhm.
Oh boy, we talked to her last
Yeah,
October.
no, she died.
Joan saw her last October.
Agnes is still at Mountain View, I think.
Ida died.
Yes,
Ooh.
yeah. So these McClures were some relation to them that lived down on Frank Smith's place.
Okay.
Now Isla, okay. William McClure is still in the 10th line.
I think so.
There's a William McClure,
He's a nephew of hers.
and he says he's no relationship to this McClure.
Well, I have no idea.
I know.
Have no idea whether they were related or not.
Well, it's a mystery.
But these ones that lived down below us were related to, some relation to Isla and Agnes.
Yes, Joan went and interviewed her.
Mm-hmm.
She had quite a history. She's like you. She had it all written down.
That's
and
not
everything.
right.
All the McClure. And yes.
I think we should probably wind up soon. I'm just wondering if either of your children what interest they have in this story. Did they talk about the past?
They're not too much for history, it doesn't seem. Maybe someday they will be,
Mm-hmm.
but they're not big on back history.
Right.
No, but
Isn't that strange? But sometimes as people get older, they maybe more when the older generation isn't around, then they maybe get a little bit more interested.
Well, I guess that's the purpose of this project that Sandy is heading up to try and get some stories down before the old timers are gone, before you and I have left the scene.
he's very
And,
modest. Huh? I'm not.
No.
We think we're hoping people will read what comes out of this or watch it on their DVD or however they're going to get it, to capture some of the history. Is there anything you want to add to what we've talked about, Wilma? Or
I don't know.
Feel
sir.
free.
is this community